Practical NLP podcast number 39 with me, Andy Smith. In this episode, we're continuing to explore the secrets of being artfully vague with Milton Model patterns, and particularly how you might use them in a business context. Last week, we covered the first 5 patterns under the heading of distortions. This week, the language patterns that we can classify as generalizations and deletions. First, generalizations. Number 6 is universal quantifiers. In other words, words like all, every, no one, always, never, and so on. You should use these words with care in business. Not everyone in business is a critical thinker, so they won't always pick up on sweeping generalizations. I don't even have to say sometimes they might, because using them with a negative already implies that some of the time sweeping generalizations will get noticed. You can also use them with predictions to create desired internal representations of what-if scenarios in the listener's mind. One day soon, every business will have one of these. Sounds more likely than, what if every business had one of these? Finally, you can use universals in a presuppositional way. Everything you've learned since you've been doing this job doesn't specify exactly what's been learned, but allows the listener to find the most relevant or important examples, because it presupposes that there definitely are some. This is especially useful where you're coaching someone or just want to talk to your colleagues or your team in a way that increases their confidence. Number 7. Modal operators. As you recall from the meta model, these are the words we use when we're implying rules or making statements about possibilities or impossibilities. They point to the existence of generalizations about what should or could be done. And like all human beliefs, they're not necessarily true, but they point the listener's thinking in certain directions, one hopes, useful ones. There are 2 kinds. Modal operators of necessity, which are shoulds, oughts, must, have to, got to, plus the negative versions like shouldn't and mustn't. Sooner or later, a person has to change. You don't have to put this into practice straight away, unless you want to see a big improvement in your results. And when you use modal operators with any kind of action words like, we've got to make this happen today, they add intensity and G people up. The other kind, modal operators of possibility, can be used to suggest possibility, as in, we can do this, or there could be a way around it. This can help to boost morale or to open up new ways of thinking and new ways around a problem. Now for the deletions. These patterns are classed as deletions because some information has been left out, which of course leaves a gap which the listener has to fill in from their own map of the world. Pattern number 8. More NLP jargon, nominalizations. These are processes or activities that have been turned into nouns. So the process of succeeding is turned into success. The process of deciding becomes a decision. You'll notice that in order for the process to be turned into a thing, a huge amount of information is left out, such as who's doing the deciding, how they decide, how long it takes, and so on. So that's why we can class nominalizations under deletions. Nominalizations are used a huge amount in business and often in a careless way. They're great for using as a shorthand way of describing complex processes like business development or organizational change, as long as both communicator and listener have a shared understanding, and you're aware that the nominalization is leaving information out. So they're best used where the subject matter demands a high level of abstraction, or again, where you want people to find their own examples. As you consider your successes in the last year, or when you look at your most effective decisions, you'll find certain commonalities. Because nominalizations turn actions into objects, they also have the effect of literally getting the listener to look at the situation more objectively, and of reducing the emotional temperature. That's the decision sounds more immovable and less confrontational than, that's what I decided. The downside of overusing nominalizations is that they don't form clear internal representations in the listener's mind, so using too many will sound vague, slippery, or boring. Plus there's the possibility of misunderstanding if the listener finds examples that aren't the ones you want. Pattern number 9, unspecified verbs. These are the antidote to micromanaging. When someone is experienced in their job and getting good results, You don't need to tell them exactly how to do each step in detail. They already know that. In fact, they may know better than you, as it's their job. So you can tell them what you want to do without getting too specific about how they do it. How about we grow this account by 50% this year? Or, I'd like you to get comfortable with the new system. You're not telling them how to do that. Unspecified verbs are also good for setting a direction for people's thinking. For example, in sales, although you will then have to give some specifics to back up the implied claim. Buying this system will transform your business, and then you can go on and make it clear how it will do that. Finally, unspecified verbs are great for encouraging creative thinking, especially when combined with modal operators of possibility. How can we increase sales? What could help to streamline the process? Pattern number 10, simple deletions. Simple deletions can be very useful. What for? Well, I could leave you to fill in that gap I left with your own ideas, but I'll also suggest a couple of examples. Simple deletions are good for inspiring. We're well on the way. Doesn't say where to, but it sounds good. If you're happy, we'll move on. Doesn't say what they're happy about or where we're moving on to, but often you don't need to. We all use simple deletions a lot, otherwise it would take ages to say anything. As ever, you need to pay attention. What to, you may be wondering, as I left that bit out. The answer is your listeners. Make sure by calibrating their responses that they haven't misunderstood, or that they don't need more context or detail than you've given them. Number 11. Unspecified nouns or unspecified referential index. It's going well, isn't it? What's going well? I'm hoping that you'll take the it to refer to your growing understanding of the Milton Model. Some people get it straight away, and some people enjoy a bit of confusion before it all falls into place. Which people? I don't need to specify. Actually, it's fine to be in either category. When you think about some of the insights you've had while you've been learning about the Milton Model, I wonder what possibilities for useful applications you can see, and what opportunities for improving some aspects of your communication you've already identified. Notice how that last sentence didn't specify what the insights were, what the possibilities were, what applications you can see, what the opportunities are, and which aspects of your communication you want to improve. I didn't need to, because you will already have found your own examples of each. In fact, I didn't want to specify communication either, because for certain people, there we go again, it will be written communication. For others it will be verbal, and maybe some of you are communicating through graphics or through actions, and that's what sprang to mind for you. Number 12. Comparative deletion. Comparative deletions are where you make a comparison but you don't say what to, leaving the listener to fill in the gap from their own map of the world. The company is now stronger. Stronger than what? The competition? Stronger than it was before? Maybe both. You can let people take their own meanings from the statement. Sometimes it's better that way, and you will be a more effective communicator for it. You can also link to comparative deletions. We've already seen cause and effect linkages. The more you practice, the better you get. And you can also use to comparatives when you want people to stop doing one thing and start doing another. A little less conversation, a little more action, in the words of Elvis. Okay. That's the first part of the Milton Model, and as you can see it consists of language patterns that are the same as the meta model. The only difference is in how we use them. We use the meta model to spot these patterns in other people's words and identify the appropriate questions that we might want to ask to help the person compare their distortions, generalizations, and deletions against their sensory experience. In the Milton Model, we're using the exact same patterns deliberately to make it easy for the listener to detach from their sensory experience and go inside. Erickson used this for assisting people into a therapeutic trance. In business, we can use it to bypass conscious resistance and craft messages that tailor themselves to the listener's map of the world, because the listener is filling in the deletions in the surface structure of our words from their own map. We're also using the Milton Model to frame what we're saying so that the listener pays more attention to what we want them to notice and less attention to whatever might get in the way. And finally, in coaching, we can use the Milton Model to help the person we're coaching find their own inner resources. That's it for this week's podcast. In the next episode, we'll learn more useful language patterns from the Milton Model. If you want to practice in the meantime, download one of my hypnotic personal development MP3 audios from nlpwebstore.com, like Cold Calling Motivation, Achieve Your Goals, or Using Your Timeline for Learning and Review, and try to trace what Milton Model patterns I'm using. See how far you get before you trance out. See you next time.